Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
But can we also think the same thing when we try and understand sustainability and making research in sustainability by making loss and damage estimate correct? So that's one of the part that I would like to discuss, but I would like to fairly go through certain issues which are related to sustainability and economic planning. Looking at the role of industries, because what is important today, all of us know that the adaptation fund has been limiting. Nobody want to put money in the adaptation fund because internal rate of return is not coming, and all the funds are going into mitigation fund. So the idea is mitigation fund will have a benefit because technology can be developed. As technologies can be developed, it is going to help us in decarbonizing. And hence we probably do not need that much of adaptation fund as compared to mitigation fund. But as we want mitigation fund to be utilized by the companies, role of companies are also important, role of business is important, and they should come forward and understand that other than the standard giving back to the society, they should also get engaged with developing technology that are important for the society. That's where your ESG rating comes, your BRSR ratings come. So I have one slide on BRSR rating as well, so that we can have some kind of an idea of that. But before BRSR, I mean, one is a regulation, second one is making the index. They're two different things. The regulation comes from the government, but making the index is an academic rigor that enters into the entire idea of ratings. So if you look at the ESG ratings, there are three components in that: environment, social, and governance. Now, the ESG rating is based on the European taxonomy of what they understand about these three dimensions. Now, there is a lesser element of dispute on E of the ESG because it is quantifiable, scientific, comparable, and homogeneous. And we have the scale of each of them. For example, coal, if we take coal consumption, we know the scaling of coal from the immature worst coal to the best possible best coal. When it comes to society, we do not have homogeneity, we do not have scale, we do not have quantification, and sometimes we don't think they are important. Right? But those who think that they are not important are part of that S. Right? We are all social, but we think that social is not important for anything else. That's where your human capital comes into picture. That's where your computation of human capital comes into picture, which creates technology, right? So therefore, S is very important in the ESG framework, and how we treat S is even more important. Now, governance is again a larger discussion which we will not take up right now. But what we are going to look at is we start the idea of this entire thing from the meetings that happens in COP. Right? Why are we talking about this entire thing? One, academic rigor. We want to become innovative. We want to create academic contributions. Second is reflection to the society that gives benefit to the society. Now, if you look at the discussion that happens in COP, because this is a homogeneous group where all of us know the entire Kyoto Protocol to the COP meeting that is right now ended in Brazil. If you look at the entire set of meetings that has happened, there is a science direction to that. There is also a regulatory governance, infrastructure, investment, and industrial element to that. So it started with Kyoto Protocol in Japan, where we probably agreed that, look, let us think about 2 degrees Celsius, but then we realized that that's not going to help for countries like us, because we need growth, then development, right? Because if we target only for development, growth will not happen. And if we are not making growth, development will not happen. There is a cyclical relationship between them. That led to, sometime creation of the IPCC, where they become the watchdog of every country in terms of the indices. And COP meetings started happening because these are not regulatory or compulsory mechanism for the countries, but they are voluntary in nature. Participating in COP, contributing in COP is not regulatory, mandatory for countries. These are all voluntary in nature, right? Because the idea of environment comes when I am rich. The idea of environment comes when I am very poor, because I am a farmer, I really value for the ecosystem, or I am very rich and I need better indices for me. So it doesn't enter into each and every heterogeneous community that we talk about. So therefore what happens, countries like us or the developed countries, the developing countries, the challenge is whether we should take up the idea of environment now in the policy or we should take environment later in the policy. So many of us end up saying that, okay, environment can stay for some more time, let us fill the idea of employment, this, that, etc. But that's also a good idea because that addresses directly the S part of the ESG, right? Unless we connect it, if we can connect it through that lens, instead of looking at the ecology, biodiversity, we can start looking at the S part of ESG and make it robust and competitive, and then definitely the E part of ESG can also be explained. So there are two elements where I wanted to focus here. One is the business element, because business is one which not only creates employment, growth, but also responsible for pollution. Majority of forms in India, if you look at the classification, the chemical forms are not only high emitting, they are also high polluting. They pollute water, they pollute land, they pollute almost every 5 elements that we talk about. But then that's not their mistake, because it's the science problem, right? The conversion is increasing somewhere. I mean, the conversion from the mass balance changes and then your energy converts and then emission comes out. So that's not a, industry will never emit if they know how not to emit. Or industries will not emit if they are told that there is a market for emission. If somebody can collect all carbon dioxide and sell it somewhere, then industry will be the most happiest person on the earth. So the problem is we are not able to create marketable goods and services for emission that comes as a negative externalities. There is also the role of governance comes into picture. Why role of governance comes into picture? Because we are all staying in something called a mixed economy framework. One is a regulatory economy, one is a free economy. So free economy is there is no government, government does not intervene at all, and everything is done by the market. Market decide everything. That's 1700 economy we talk about, Adam Smith time of economy. Regulator was not there. There is no presence of regulator. The other extreme is regulator decides almost everything. That means there is no space for business or market to think about possibilities. Today we are in a setup which is a mix of both. We have an industry, we have a market, and we have a government. So that's where the regulations comes into picture. Like for example, whether ESG rating has to be introduced, whether LCA has to be introduced for certain technologies, whether when you talk about circularity, are we also talking about the circularity of waste to wealth creation or wealth to waste, whatever kind of thing we would like to look at it, and how certain standards can be created. That's the part of the regulator comes into picture. ISO standards, a lot of standards are being done by the regulators. But then if you look at the role of academicians, they are supposed to be in both, that they are supposed to be in business because they should tell them what is the exact and good technology to be developed, which is climate friendly. At the same time, they should be in the regulator to tell them that what regulatory bodies should take up the policies in such a way that doesn't harm the business. Because government would always try to save the business because that's one of the employment generating activity that happens in the economy. Now, if both of can join together, then probably we are going to have 1.5 degrees Celsius, where that's called a livable condition. Even if that degree changes, we can live on this earth. The third component is the predictability of climate extremes and climate events. That brings the strength in terms of accepting that certain resources are going to be not available after some period of time. For example, coal will not be available was written in last 20 years, right? But today also we come up with policies which are coal-based policies. So if you look at our fossil fuel industry is still strengthening. So which means that somewhere on earth coal is available, not in India, probably we are importing from somewhere or new mines being identified or something has happened, so we do not have complete information set to make people understand that, look, these are the problematic fossil fuels which should not be used. So we need academician in that perspective also to bring out the idea of forecasting the particular fossil fuel available for the market. But then the question always comes as an economist, what is my benefit? What is my country's benefit? What is my society's benefit if I go in the competitive spirit of making climate change is one of my major important policies? Am I not doing a trade-off? For example, if I would like to purchase climate friendly products, they are costlier. Any climate friendly product you buy in the market are costlier. Like AC, if you buy 5-star rating AC, they are costlier. But if you buy 1-star AC, they are not costlier. You buy sugar free from sulfur, they are costlier. Along with sulfur, they are non-costlier. Any product you buy, even in sugar, sugar free are more costlier than the normal sugar. Today salt has also come up like that, like the pink salt is available which is more costlier than the white salt which we were forced to take at some point in time, that this is the best salt. Now, do I have an economy that can accept, adopt and grow if I create products like this? It can be technological product, it can be consumable goods and services, or it can be any product in the global value chain that comes. So what is my benefit as an economic entity and economic agent, and what is the benefit to the society that I represent? That becomes a major challenge. And trust me, even developed countries think in that way. Developed countries will not agree to implement a policy where they will have a loss. Right? For example, trade happens. Now when trade happens, high-tech goods and services are traded much more costlier compared to the low-tech goods and services. Now, the developed countries have access to high-tech technology, they can actually sell it on a higher cost, like defense equipments or automotive or even certain pharmaceutical products. They are high priced. Low-tech products are like textile or these are the low-tech products. They are priced cheaper. I mean, that's where if you go to the market, we get an advertisement, if you buy 2 t-shirts, 3 t-shirts are free. We never get an advertisement that 1 apple, 2 apple will be free in the computer market, because that is high-tech goods and services. So each country therefore would look like, when they talk about biodiversity, they talk about sustainability, they would look like whether the outcome is going to be positively associated with us or not. Can we develop a sector that can employ people, can increase our income? That's what currently we are talking about circularity, waste to wealth creation, etc. This is going to become a big sector in India, because many industries are ready to enter into the space, and they would like to create industries which are going to employ people who have an expertise in circularity. And that's why many of the projects which are now given are related to, can we convert waste to an utility product? Because the simple fact is, the density of population in India are producing so much of waste of different types of heterogeneity in nature. We need experts to actually convert back into the, either into the virgin material or to convert into a useful material. So if you look at here, LIC is low income countries, MLIC is medium low income countries as defined by the World Bank. World Bank does not identify them as developed, underdeveloped and developing country, because that notion is not there. Because when somebody says underdeveloped, countries feel bad. Therefore, they redefine into 4 classification now: high income, medium high income, medium low income and low income categories. And the second reason for changing the nomenclature was, when you say developed, it should have the indices of development, not the indices of growth. So when your indices of growth is basically income, you should not call developed country, emerging country, lower developed country or something like that. So they change the connotation. So India stands in the medium low income countries. We have upgraded ourselves from low income countries. And this entire map, entire connection that I am trying to show is basically are based on 3 pillars. The first pillar is finance. These countries have access to finance problem even if they have capabilities and resources. Second, these are the countries which are largely fossil fuel dependent countries because of the technology gap that we have. And therefore, we need global interdependency, which will create benefit in terms of maximizing our welfare and our benefit in terms of becoming competitive with the rest of the world in terms of sustainability. For example, anybody has time after today's talk, evening, whatever time it ends, there are 17 SDGs. You try to write which country represents best in each SDG. Okay, 17 are there. Just randomly there are 200 odd countries are there. World Bank has the data. Give some time on that and look at which SDG, which country is good and which country is bad. All the non-technological sectors we are bad. We don't have a good representation there. Right? Because the contribution of technology is also a function of how much finance you have. Then it is internal finance or external finance. That's why in 2012, Clean Development Mechanism was devised where European Union were agreeing to transfer technology as a lesser cost to Indian economy. And that is where the beginning of windmill started in India, which is the western part of India, Maharashtra, starting from Satara to Ahmednagar district. They got the installation of windmill because of the technology transfer that happened in CDM, Clean Development Mechanism time. That means not only India but other countries also require those kind of technology transfer because creating technology takes time. Technology cannot be created in a very short time of 10 days or 15 days or even 10 years. It takes a lot of time, lots of investment that is where we need the global interdependency that has to come, which should be different than the global trade dependency. So one is trade dependency. That means somebody gets up in the morning and says that I will increase the tax for one country. That's a trade competition, trade competitiveness. What I am talking about is technology dependency is required for the countries which are polluting the earth. If you say India is polluting, China is polluting because they are the heavy population based countries and therefore consumption level is high, then we need support in terms of the financial support and so that we can come out of the fossil fuel dependency. But then I look at some other data, what matters for the business, why business will be interested for that. Because if you look at the patents, now business has started patenting themselves, right? Industry academia has become successful now and a lot of industries through CSR grant or otherwise come to IIT for example for doing research and they also patent. But then there is one more step to understand which are the companies patenting. Are they domestic companies or the international companies? Now if it is international companies, where patent is counted for them? Is it counted in their host country or is it counted in the country where they operate? Right? So we have to look at all these dynamics. For example, if Google is patenting with Indian manpower in India, in Indian institution, whether India is getting the benefit from patent in academia and industry or only academia we get the benefit, industry benefit goes to somebody else. How many such patents are coming in the sustainability space? One of us have to take that responsibility because intellectual property right data is available. It is available up to 6-digit classification, which is the lowest of the level we can identify. Then we have to see what is the sustainability related research led to any kind of knowledge creation. Why knowledge creation is important? Because the success of Apple as a company is only based on the idea that their intellectual property is very strong. That's why in the Mac market you have only one product. In the Windows market you have multiple products. And they control the entire market and many of us have purchased it because of the strength, durability, efficiency, whatever we call it. And they are high priced. So anything with technology will always be high priced. Right? Look at water for instance. There is 10 rupees water. There is water directly brought from Himalaya. There is water directly brought from Himalaya from Gangotri, which is the specific place. and there is charcoal water, right? So as and when technology enters in H2O, H2O becomes costlier. So similarly, it happens with all products. But then the question is, who owns that technology? Who is owning that technology so that there is a monopoly in production system that happens? Now, can we create some kind of a competitiveness in that space? Because today as government and all of us are looking at decarbonization, looking at the renewable energy production, looking at the solar photovoltaics, hydrogen production, green hydrogen, who is going to control this technology? And hence that is the way we get the economic benefit of that, right? So these are the challenges we have. Other than carbon dioxide is spoken more often everywhere as we go, right? But we have the problem of deforestation. That's a major challenge for us. We have to end deforestation. In fact, just when I was looking at the Planning Commission's document from 1950 till today, when we did not have a decarbonization policy in India, we have afforestation policy. Next statement, you know, right now we are working on decarbonization, we don't have an afforestation policy. It is there, but it is not there aggressively. The reason is simple, because the afforestation policy of India was aimed at creating livelihood, not it was meant for carbon absorption, right, or sequestration. But that's the best way to sequester carbon, right? Natural way to sequester carbon. So the aggressiveness of budget allocation for afforestation program has continually changed, where we are talking about the decarbonizing and etc., etc. So our policies should also go hand in hand as we create new policies. So deforestation is important. Methane emission is very important. We are going to talk about it sooner, the moment we are done with the carbon dioxide emission in some time. And India is going to be in a problem because we are an agrarian, livelihood dependent, livestock dependent economy. In these areas, there is a possibility that it matters for the business if they can come out of intellectual property right, do some innovation in that and come up with solutions so that it will become a monopoly for them in some time to go. So these are the critical questions for the LDCs and MLDCs, that is the low income and the medium low income countries. Simple reason I am focusing on these two countries is because for any climate related activities, we are dependent on international grants, because we do not have grants inside our economy to create for our own purpose. So we depend on the international grant. Unless we identify our problem, it becomes difficult in terms of addressing that. So the first thing, we are targeting for the economic development, we are targeting on overutilizing nature and biodiversity. We don't have a planning before the creation of a biodiversity loss, and we tend to understand after the loss is done. Look at the number of houses damaged in Kerala in last flood and identify where these houses were constructed. All these houses were constructed on a small hill, right? Because it looks very beautiful. When you open the window, you can see the nature, but nature will take its decision sometime, right? And the entire house gets washed away. Because we don't have policies on that. We have never looked at the natural and biodiversity policy as one of the major policies. In fact, let me tell you, 2004, we started energy statistics, release of energy statistics. And that time, energy department was not independent. It was with the Ministry of Environment and Climate. Then it came out as an independent entity. Today, it has become new and renewable energy. So this is the growth we are doing in terms of understanding, creating a ministry which can take the policies. And Ministry of Climate Change Ministry of Environment has become Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. Right? So the first question we have is how these economies are talking about nature and biodiversity loss, which has a link directly with the pollution and the waste that is being generated. You know, one of the major problems, the problem is we do not report pollution and waste. There is no economic reporting happens. for how much pollution a particular industry is doing and how much waste is generated. Everybody knows data is there, but I am asking, where is the data? Give me the data. Data is not there in a systematic, doable manner. One has to employ, a primary survey to do those things. The reason is simple. The West or the European Union are able to identify the pollution because they have a carbon tax. Because we do not have a carbon tax, our industries do not report it. Right? So if tomorrow the government will come up with a carbon tax, they will start reporting it. So reporting is very important for these two countries, these two set of countries. And therefore, if they can tackle these two, then they will be better in terms of the transformation that we are thinking about. But we can't leave everything to the government because government income is only tax. So it is the responsibility of the other actors, including the non-government organizations and the industries, to look at in terms of how they can contribute to the entire idea of sustainability. Now, if you look at the agribusiness sector, I am focusing here because I am representing Indian case here. If I ask you a question, can you name 10 airline industries in India? 10. Answer is no. 10 airline industries in India. Service providers. Can you identify? No. 3, 4. Can you name 10 sugar producing companies in India? 10. Not products, companies. Can you name 10 tobacco companies in India? 10 tobacco companies. Tobacco producing companies, not the brands. Can you name 10 biscuit producing companies in India? 10. Tell. Britannia, Parle-G, ITC. No, ITC is separate. Okay. Patanjali. Biscuit is there. 5. Tell me rest of the 5s. Nestle 6. Now we have difficulty, right? There may be 10. I am not telling there may not be 10, but after 6 we have a difficulty to identify. Meaning all these industries are less than 10 players. Right? And in many industries they are less than 5 players. Which means the entire change that we are talking about can be dealt by those 5 players alone. If these 5 players join together to solve a problem, these 5 players can easily do away with everything. Why agriculture? I put it as a specific one, because agriculture is where the problem starts and agriculture where the problem ends. Now, if agri-business sector, where I have a difficulty in identifying 10 companies in India which are giving FMCG product. Same question you ask yourself, 10 wheat producers in India, company-wise. Okay, think about it. 10 noodle producers. I am giving just a number 10. That means there are very less number of companies which are producing the output for us to consume. Multiple products are there of that company. That is not of my interest. My interest is the company level. So solution is not really difficult for India if we can bring them on board and say, look, you guys are producing this and this is the sustainability issue on your sector. Can we join hands to do and come out of a solution? Because government cannot actually solve all the problems that we are talking about. Now, if you further go away from those ideas, then we have a marine sector where government has invested a lot in the blue economy sector today. In fact, day before yesterday when I was in Jaipur, they have created a center for excellence in reporting and accounting of blue economy. So COE for accounting in blue economy is now created as an independent sector. That means we are talking about only FMCG sectors or the manufacturing sector, but beyond manufacturing we have all other sectors which are the forest sector. Land in Indian context is too difficult, it is not being mapped correctly. In fact, ma'am knows well that when you have a picture from the satellite and you put it on Indian map, it doesn't match, right? So there is a difficulty in creating those maps. So we have a lot of other sectors that we can also think in the same line. Identify players, who is responsible, what is the market share, what is the concentration ratio of them, and can they help in coming up with some solution for us. I think the PPT has a different font, it just converted into a different font, I'm sorry for that. The other indicators focusing on today's discussion is pollution and waste, and we must address it by looking at the air quality, air pollution, fuel types, pollution types, and where is the opportunity we have. Do we have any opportunity in that? Right? For example, why Delhi suffers from another additional season called pollution season, right? So there are 3-4 seasons everywhere. They have one more season called pollution season during the winter that comes and stays for 2 months and then goes away. Is it only because of, I mean, there is no straight answer, because if there was a straight answer, probably people would have come up with solutions, right? Odd even did not work. Shifting to shifting to EV did not work. Controlling the burning of agri waste did not work, which means there is something else. The industry academia has to work and come up with a solution more concretely, which may take a little bit more time, that's fine. Right? So we have to look at the indicators of choice. But then once we do that, there are 4 important pillars that comes. One is called the demand side effect, because suddenly certain goods and services will be of very high demand and you have to manage it. Okay. The best example I can give you, which is not related to this engagement, but Bluetooth, for example. Okay. Enough demand. What is one of the reasons of Bluetooth demand? Why? Earlier when I was using earphone, my father used to tell ear will go bad. Right? Today why everybody is using and what is the purpose? It's a simple technological force. At some point in time, some mobiles like me, they removed the ear jack. I don't know if you guys have really looked at this part. The recent Samsung does not have this cover has a hole, but the phone doesn't have a hole. Right? So 0.5 mm wire that used to go insert as an audio jack is not there. Now, if I was using a wired one, what is my choice? To shift to a Bluetooth. Now, as Bluetooth company perished, then they created a wired one which will work in the Type-C. So they could have done the reverse. First Type-C, then Bluetooth, but Bluetooth was supposed to be introduced. So it will have a demand side effect. The same thing, Ayurvedic products has a demand side effect. Many of us think that Ayurvedic product is really good as compared to other product because we believe on a particular brand or we believe on certain things. Natural products has gone up really high demand in last few years. So it will have a demand side effect. The second thing is this demand side effect will have a connection with innovation. If Patanjali has become successful, 10 companies like Patanjali will come into the market because they know that the market is now accepting my products. One of the best examples is makhana. Right? It has become national food. You travel in Indigo, you get makhana. Okay. You travel in any other flight, you get a makhana I never had makhana in my life. I started eating only whenever it came into the airport. So I was healthy before. It's not that I was unhealthy, right? But the idea that makhana is a good food is because of the demand side effect, making the makhana board to represent the Bihar economy and the growth of Bihar economy. That is an innovation. Now suddenly what happens? Caramel makhana, then you have all kind of makhanas are on board. So the point is, this is a simple example I have given what happens daily life. Similarly, take up the technology which will be accepted and which will have an innovation into the economy. That links with the circular models and the reducing outsourcing environmental damage. Why it is important? Because 2026 January, India is going to sign CBAM policy, which is Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism policy. The moment we sign that policy, each carbon produced in economy are going to be counted. Now please don't ask me how it is going to be counted because there will be some framework somewhere. But everything produced from my economy will be counted. And then economy has the advantage or benefit either to accept this particular export from India or not. So if it is a heavy carbon content material, I will always say that I don't want to import from your country. So that is where I have to be very, very careful on circular economy, circular models, etc., etc. Right? A parallel example is, if you go to airports, they say that we are decarbonized. Airports decarbonized, okay. You think, I mean, how can you become decarbonized when your aviation fuel is kerosene? Right? But what they are telling is the airport is decarbonized. We are not talking about the airlines and fuels. That means we are producing enough renewable sources on our rooftop where we are becoming decarbonized. So that reduces the carbon content of a particular airport, not of the flight that is operating. Now it's the problem of the flights to now tell how they are going to be decarbonized or what is their carbon content. So CBAM is coming, where CBAM is going to have a negative effect on Indian economic growth unless we address the problem of circularity and responsible outsourcing behaviors. That leads to the understanding of ESG, environment, social and governance indicator. These indicators are in between 25 to 125 indicators are taken. Now you must ask why there is no consistency for that. The reason is the structure is created by the regulator, but the agencies which are computing these indices are not controlled by the government. So they are like, the examples are like Bloomberg is doing it, private companies are doing it, there are 5-6 agencies which are doing this ESG ratings. It's not done by any government, either European economy or Indian economy or any other economy. These are done by the big corporate giants. Why it is done by them? Because till today the ESG ratings for the industries are based on the fund flow mechanism. I will request all of you to go to Bloomberg and read the definition of sustainability. The definition of sustainability is, in the presence of a natural calamity / hazard / etc., whether the company will stay or not. It is not how much the company is supporting to the environment, okay. So read it, the definition that they have given in the Bloomberg. That means, in an unforeseen economic or natural calamity, will the particular industry will be able to produce goods and services the way they were producing. They are very clear on the definition. And that is where this is handled by the corporate giants who identify the best ESG rating firms in terms of those parameters. So that foreign direct investment can happen, internal finance can go there, and your fund is not going to convert into a no performing assets or an NPA. So there is a guaranteed return from your investment. Because if you look at the best performing ESG rating firms in worldwide, in one of the ranking the energy company comes, which is a fossil fuel based company. It used to be named as the petroleum and some industry, they changed into the energy industry, right? Now that is top one. How does it come in the top one? They are polluting ones. Because they have technologies which will help them sustain in the economy in presence of a climate disaster or climate sensitivity. So as of now, this is used as a fund flow behavior to identify a company whether the company can sustain for a longer time. Because the problem is, if you look at the recent audited report of Government of India, entry-exit behavior in the industry sector is very high. The minimum year of establishment is 10 years. For example, at IIT Madras, we have a lot of startups. What is the probability a startup will become a big company? Less than 4% or less than 3% worldwide. So startup comes, enters, enjoys investment and becomes something, then sell it off. Every startup doesn't become a big company. Because it's a natural that company will be born and company will die. But now the question is, can a foreign investor invest in a company which will die soon? The economic answer is no. That is why people complain why few firms are there, like we all talked about 4 firms. because they are going to sustain in the market for a very long time. And they have been in the market for a very long time. That is where ESG rating is used. But then policymaker thought that can we also use this indicator to reflect on our sustainability part. That is the derived benefit of ESG rating, not the direct benefit of ESG rating as it is being framed. That is where the SEBI has started the BRSR reporting for India. Again, ESG rating is a voluntary rating framework. It is not a mandatory rating framework. It is done by the companies which are largely participating in fund flow and international fund receive activities. But BRSR report is again Government of India created through SEBI, Security Exchange Board of India, where they tried to encourage firms. The first, they started with 100 firms reporting, which are the best 100 firms. Then they now extend it to 1000 firms. So in the stock market, firms which are large firms, 1 to 1000, will have to report it. That's become a mandatory for them. Now, the idea of BRSR is to create a similar kind of an index, can be comparable with the ESG index. Why it is important? Because in India, we must have something called our own taxonomy. We must understand our companies. And our companies should understand their characteristics. I give you an example because nowadays we are converting these PDF numbers into Excel editable format. We are able to do it 200 forms as of now. We are analyzing and writing papers based on the BRSR reporting and the problems with BRSR reporting. Now there is a company which produces coal, correct? Now the question is what materials are used by your company? So it says that okay, I use truck, I use this, that, etc., etc. What is the output you get? I get coal as an output. Do you use water in the entire process? Answer is no. They are correct because in the process they are not using, but without fresh water, the coal company cannot transport it from point A to point B because friction will be there. So they spray water. So water is being sprayed when it is going into the railways, which railways help them to take it from point A to point B. So water is being sprayed. Now the question is, they do not know that they have to report that water as one of the input parameters. And it is not saline water, by the way, it is fresh water. Sometimes purposefully they don't answer the question because they are afraid of the government saying that if I declare it, probably I'll have another additional tax for me. But then in the process, we are not able to understand and price the water. Because unless I know in Jharkhand, majority of the coal factories are using water and demand for water is more, I have to price water differently for them and differently for the others. Now, in the financial reporting, what these guys do, they put water in the energy cost. Now, as an engineer, if you look at the data, you will be thinking maybe they will convert into H2O, they will convert into something, boiler, heat and etc., and they will probably using it. But it is not that they are using in that process, they are using for something else. Because the data does not tell you that what is the characteristics unless the number is only given, like 10 cubic liters of water is consumed. For what purpose, we do not know. So that is where the BRSR try to regulate it and try to tell industries that you have to report correctly, where there are 9 principles, and then the challenge comes because government is trying to make as much effort to get the data from the industries. Industries have a major problem in terms of data collection and reporting quality. Because there is no expert in the industry who can understand what is BRSR. They have never recorded this data. And that's a big challenge on ESG rating also. For example, on employment statistics, where S stands for social, employment statistics data is not there at all, including the big automotive industries. And we proxy it by the salaries and wages. Right? Because the moment you enter the employment data, you have to abide by the international labor laws in terms of governing this labor input. So there is no clarity on the labor data. Now, if the labor data is poor, then your ESG rating will be poor. Because next question in labor data is how many male, female and other gender are there. Next question will be how much vacancies are there. So I was doing a audit for one of the Government of India's entity where the vacancy is 46%. In set of industries which are under the watch of Government of India, 46% is the employment which could have been created, which means the company has either loaded more work to the remaining people who are working, they are doing also work for the 46%, or it is becoming inefficient due to this 46% loss of manpower or employment. And hence the ESG ratings comes down. The moment ESG ratings comes down, Indian companies do not access international fund. Or Indian company access international funds which are polluting funds. So it's like this, it's called a pollution heaven hypothesis, meaning polluting country always would like to invest in polluting country. And there is a statistical evidence of that. The way corrupt countries will invest in corrupt countries, pollutive countries will always invest in a polluting country. So how do you know a country is polluting? If a particular country do not have a clarity in environmental rules and regulations, laxity of rules and regulation and environmental quality, that country is assumed to be pollutive. So look at the investment that has come to India for last few years. We don't have a very strong rules and regulations for environmental thing till last few years, new rules are coming up. Majority of investment has come to India in mining sector. Majority of investment has come in high-tech sector like pharmaceutical sector. We are very happy about it. But the amount of waste created by pharma companies and the mining companies are out of expectation. Because polluting, an economy has to agree that I am ready to join in foreign direct investment or foreign portfolio investment for producing pharmaceutical goods and services, which is a chemical sector, which is a polluting sector. Right? So therefore, we have to make the industries aware about the reporting standards. They should know it and they should take the advice of people who can actually help them. And the problem with them is they have to create a new cell, because they have set of engineer with their own works. So you have to have a new set of entity for BRSR reporting. That is where the data collection and reporting data becomes a difficult task. Social dimension is very difficult for them, they never dealt with it, so complexity in the social issues is becoming one of the problem, even under the BRSR framework. Then governance reporting challenges. In India, majority of the firms are ideally created as a family-owned firms. They never started as a non-family-owned business group firms. They start as a family-owned firms, then they go public, then they become limited companies, then they understand that, okay, we have to bring more people in board of governors and let us bring more people in board of governors. Now who are they? They are their relatives, right? They are the relatives, friends and all that thing. So they don't actually look at the governance indicator from the beginning. And therefore it becomes difficult. Now if we ask how many female board member are there, you don't have a data. So suddenly you recruit a female board member. Right? That becomes a challenge for us. Compliance cost, time horizon, standardizations for the Indian economy, again because Indian economy is too complex in terms of looking at the input and output metrics. Now, all of you should ask me that why would an industry do this? Because look at the fund available. I don't know if it's visible, but if I can tell you from here, the fund, international fund allocated for green finance alone. I'm not talking about anything else. Now, green finance can be done only when technology is there. Economists cannot do it. We have to have technologies, market tested, innovation, IPR, etc., leading to a production process. Now, in the water and waste, there are $67 billion were allocated for green finance. For building an infrastructure, I am talking in front of civil engineers, $240 billion were invested only on green finance. Then others and cross-sectoral sectors, around $43 billion was given. Energy systems, $515 billion were given. Transport sector, $336 billion were given. Now this is the data of last 2 years data I am showing you, where this was the allocated money on green finance. Right? The reason I show it here because let us reverse this process. Let us identify where money is there, which sectors there are a lot of money, and let us make group to work on those sectors, so that it is easy to get the funding from these agencies in terms of the green finance. Let us identify industries in these sectors, water and waste sector, or building sector, construction sectors, energy system sector, and transport sector, because these are the major 5 sectors where green finance is attractive and international mobility grant is available. Then what happens? There is a win-win not only for the academician, for the researcher, also there is a benefit for the industry to enter into the green finance options. And this is the market. The market, you can look at it, 2011 data you see it started, 2021 it become like $1,265 billion, and the estimated 2050 data you look at it is going to become $12,227 billion. Which means there is a huge market available for the LDCs and MLDCs to enter into this. And fortunately, these 5 areas are also problematic areas for us. It actually converges with the idea of the market that is building up. And this is just a scenario building. I am not telling this is exactly the number. This number can be much more than what it is being reported here. And therefore, economics and science of circularity is very important to come up with solutions that can enter into the model of business finance and sustainability approach, where the innovator will also become profit maximizer, not just a creation of knowledge. So I'll stop here. I've already taken a few minutes extra. So there are 2-3 things are there which they can read it basically if they want. Right? Any questions if you have, I'm fine. Or if you want any additional reading, I can send it to her. There are so many reports on this. Yeah, so it is used by Bloomberg in multiple paragraphs.
And how do they define resilience?
No, they define only what do they mean by the ESG ranking and its applications. So they don't go to the one more step down in defining things. So they use resilience as a synonym of whether a firm can remain longer in a particular economy or not.
Isn't that how you define sustainability?
That is true, but then sustainability for whom? So it's basically sustainability for the company, not for the ecosystem. So there are 2 questions here. One is for the ecosystem, one is for the company. So these definitions are for the company, not for the ecosystem. So therefore sustainability becomes a huge English word. I mean, what sustainability we are talking about, for which sector we are talking about, for which economic agent we are talking about. Because many cases sustainability is assumed to be directly correlated with only ecology or biodiversity. That is not the case. Now before my opinion, let us give some numbers to you. Few economies including India started in 1995 calculating something called green GDP. India was a part of that. So green GDP is something like a green economy, you can say. So green GDP is your GDP minus the depreciation that happens because of environmental damage. But then if all economies will adopt it, the oil economies will have always a negative green GDP. Right? Because they produce oil, they emit more, and their production will have larger amount of implications to the society, therefore they will have a lesser number in the green GDP. And that's why the debate on green GDP was It never took off. Then next question is, why it didn't took off and economists did not actually fight for it? Because the negative externalities of environment are non-market goods and services. It doesn't enter to the market. These are assumed cost. So the idea was, how can you punish a country based on an assumed cost? For example, what is your value of life and what is the value of my life? The value of our life is a function of my insurance. Right? If my per month insurance is 10,000 US dollar, my value of life is like some multiple thousands of that. If you are putting 100 rupees, that is our value of life. Or put it a different way, if I die while traveling in a bus, my value of life is 0. I die in the flight, my value of life is 5 lakhs. So these are all assumed numbers, correct? Because these are non-marketable goods and services. There is no standardization of price. Therefore, green GDP was never considered as one of the major implications for economic and climate policies. Second question is, who is bringing climate into the agenda? It is the European Union. Like if you go back to the manifesto of the political parties, it was the Green Party which started talking about environment. It was not originated from the low income countries, because our problems are different. We have to first look at those problems in terms of perspective. Now when we say degrowth, are you talking degrowth in terms of population or are you talking degrowth in terms of finances? GDP. Now GDP degrowth is going to happen even if you don't have a policy like that. There is always a threshold. Beyond that threshold, it cannot go up. Example is, what is the growth rate for India? India is beyond 7 to 8%. What is the growth rate of the US? 3 to 4%. Right? Now, if you look at the data of last 50 years, countries like India has come to a position where they were never there. And countries have come down, like Japan is an example in this particular case. Because human capital is the fundamental of making your economic growth. Right? So, degrowth in the economy will happen. For example, nobody actually thought that semiconductor industry will take the entire world in a different line. It happened because we never thought about semiconductor industry. We never thought about energy storage materials, demand for those materials, rare earth materials. We are forced to think about it because if you want to decarbonize, you have to develop the battery system, energy storage system. That requires a particular metal which is not available in many countries. So if I flip the story, can I conclude that the entire photovoltaic policy was made for China? Right? I don't know who made it, right? Where it originated from. If you flip the story now, because the technology they have, the material they have, the industry they have, they become the competitive energy providers as compared to the OPEC and the Middle East. Can I conclude like that? Because we do not know the impact as and when we reach to new policies in our life, right? So economic degrowth will happen to countries by default, because it's a function of your workable population that you have. Countries like Japan has already started negative growth in terms of their population. We are fortunately in a period where we still have good amount of human capital, but there will be a time when our economy will also face that. That's why there is something called economics of aging. And economics of aging is very big problem for the developed countries. People don't die, right? Now, my efficiency in terms of employment in India is 65 years. If I don't die till 105 years, I have to feed myself for the remaining savings I have, or government has to support me. Now, when people like me will be there more, then the burden on the government is more. Degrowth will by default happen. But there is another argument going on in the population degrowth policy. Let's not go to that, that's a little controversial one. Unless we stop blaming carbon dioxide too much. See, the entire focus has been on carbon dioxide. For whatsoever reason, carbon dioxide is around 75%, 70% in GHG composition. It doesn't dissolve, and there is a scientific evidence agreeable by majority that it is going to create a problem. That's why BOD, COD pollution nobody is worried about. So one of us have to aggressively write about the impact of pollutive water in terms of human capital. Something like that, unless you wake up the government in terms of the impact of these pollutions. Value to it. But at the same time, see, water cleaning companies are there. The RO has actually taken over it. Before any policy could have been brought in, the RO industry have said, we will give you clean water. But there is no industry that has come which say, I will give you clean outdoor air. For indoor air, we have a lot of innovations, right? I mean, there are small innovations that is done. For outdoor air, we have no company that has said in Delhi that I will have one machine where carbon dioxide will be taken, something like that. So the solution probably seems to be available in the water front than in the carbon dioxide front. Yeah, because there are no big companies there, right? You need to have a presence of big companies which are polluting in that level. Unless those companies are there, finance will not be created. So finance is basically you reduce carbon and then translate into a carbon finance. So basically you are given an access to invest in another country. So unless big guys in this sector comes up, as you correctly said, like, water pollution happens, soil degradation happens, COD, BOD happens, probably blue economy may take care of that. Because one of the major statistics that is coming is also the pollution in sea. That is not seen as how much impact it can have on us. How much impact it has on the fisheries, aquaculture, etc., we have never estimated. So someone has to aggressively work on it and write on these things. Yeah, so growth, when we say growth, it's an economic growth in terms of 5 factors. Consumption, expenditure, investment, government spending, export and import. These are the 5 things where growth is computed. Development is beyond this. So when we compute development, we don't look at these 5 pointers. So this is called GDP, gross domestic product, disaggregated into 5 components, C plus I plus G plus X minus N, which is consumption expenditure, government investment, government expenditure, investment in the economy, how much you export and how much you import. So if you can equalize import-export, your economic growth is high. But development doesn't add all this. Development talks about social inclusion, social development, education, health, security, which are indirectly linked with economic indicators, not directly linked with economic indicators. See, the company will have to invest on ESG to make their indicators strong. For example, the energy industry has to invest on energy innovation to create technologies which are efficient than the earlier technology. Then they get a higher point. So first is their sustainability, but the outcome that comes as their sustainability will have an impact on the larger sustainability.
So they prioritize
their innovation technology so that their reporting will be better. For example, there is one indicator in the ESG of E is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. So how much they are earlier emitting, now how much they are emitting. If they emit less, then they get more points. They can emit less only when they innovate. Now innovation happens only when you have better human capital. You have better human capital if you are inclusive. So it's a cyclical nature of connecting things. So even if they are reporting E of ESG, that partially takes care of S and G of ESG also. We are already taxing the ultra-rich in the income tax classification and the regime of income tax slabs. But at the same time, the goods and services they consume are typically more expensive with higher tax. Right? For example, somebody who is very, very rich, like in Bollywood, consuming Bisleri company's water, so they'll be consuming something. Wearing a bag, ladies' bag, which is like 200 rupees, 50 lakhs rupees of a bag. So we are already. But what it is now being discussed in the government tax. The inheritance tax which you got as a. So can we come up with a wealth tax? Recently, and discussion is going on. But I would not link this tax with you must come up with a differentiated parameter. Example is Singapore. Prove that I have a parking lot, unless I am using the best engine possible, unless better driving, I can't buy a. I can buy only one car. If I want to buy another, second car would be thrice than the cost of the first car. Policy is brought out. That will help in terms of environmental benefit. But we don't have such policy, no. So when odd even came, I will have an odd number card and an even number card. Right? Or I will have an odd one and my wife will have an even number card. So we have not taken the data correctly and understood the data that how many people have multiple cars, how many people are polluting how much. Based on that, we can devise some other tax, not income tax, because that tax is used for something else.